The last topic concerning bargaining theory and game theoretical approaches to negotiations I want to discuss today has to do with uncertainty and the role of information and information asymmetry in particular. And basically the motivation for being interested in information is in that a lot of things that we have discussed so far with regard to negotiation tactics and the determinants of outcomes of negotiations, their functioning critically depends on the distribution of information across the negotiation parties. Think about a situation in which everyone had a complete information about the whole bargaining setup. So everyone knew all the actors, everyone knew what everyone wanted, everyone knew the rules, and most importantly, everyone knew the reservation points of everyone else in the room. In such a perfect information environment, in principle, it would be possible to devise the agreement almost automatically. In fact, in bargaining theory, there are specific concepts such as the so-called Nash bargaining solution that do precisely that identify the ideal, from all kinds of perspectives, the ideal solution to such a situation, excuse me. But typically, they cannot be achieved, such outcomes, such almost automatic arrival at cooperative agreements that potentially are both efficient and fair, which is of course a beautiful combination. They cannot easily be achieved because of the problem of information and of the fact that a lot of information, the key critical information for the negotiations, is private, meaning that the actors themselves possess it, but their partners do not. And typically, or the most important piece of such private information is one's reservation point. So the point, or the so-called reservation level, right? So the point beyond which I am not willing to accept the agreement. So we can go back to the previous discussion of the no agreement point or reversion point, right? And this point gives me certain so-called reservation level, utility from the reservation level. Now, revealing this to my partners is the worst thing I can do in the negotiations, because what they could then in principle do would be just offer me a tiny little bit more than what my reservation level is and make me satisfied, or make me more satisfied than with the negotiation breakdown, and they would take all the other gains that have been on the table and over which the whole bargaining process was really about. So, if we lived in a world of perfect information, reaching negotiated outcomes would in principle be very simple. Now, unfortunately, we do not live in a world of perfect information, and we live in a world of incomplete or notoriously incomplete information, where uncertainty especially about others' preferences and about others' resolve, becomes a key feature of the negotiations. Who wants what in the negotiations, and how much? And how much are they willing to invest? How much are they willing to maintain their negotiations positions under pressure from others, perhaps? Right? If we only knew this, our chances of getting a good deal in the negotiations would be much higher. But precisely because of that, of course, this information is typically the most secret thing in the negotiations. And in this sense, this asymmetry of information, if someone knows about others' so-called red lines, so the lines that define the zone of agreement within which a deal can be struck, but beyond which the other actors wouldn't simply be willing to accept any deal. So asymmetry of information about these critical features of the negotiations can be a major source of power. Knowing how others perceive the situation and what they know, especially knowing what they are willing to accept, gives one a lot of leverage. So if I, some actor, know your reversion point in the negotiations, I can very easily just push you into accepting something just a tiny little bit better than what your reversion point is, and therefore reap all the rest of the gains myself. Now, there is a major problem with information in the negotiations. We said that on the one hand, it would be just amazing if everyone had perfect information about the situation, then we could easily reach an agreement in almost a mechanical manner. On the other hand, no one has incentives to reveal the private information. Exactly the opposite. Everyone has all the incentives in the world to conceal this information as one as much as possible. So everyone has incentives to lie or to bluff about one's interests and about one's resolve. So given that, and given that we know from bargaining theory again that actually knowing what others want is somehow critical for the negotiation success, we are kind of stuck. Collectively, everyone is better off when information is shared and when everyone's position is transparent. Individually, this is the last thing you want to do to reveal your position in the negotiations very clearly and to become transparent to your negotiation partners. So if we know that we are in this situation, that basically everyone has incentives to lie and to hide information, how can we at all proceed? How can we make the negotiations work? Well, we need to adopt what is, or we don't need to do anything, but you may think about adopting what is referred to as costly signaling strategies, meaning that you signal, that you communicate your information in a manner that is costly. And this again goes back to something that I've already mentioned a bit a couple of minutes ago, where actors can engage in sending signals that end up being costly for themselves in case it turns out that they haven't been serious about them. By this, they can improve the credibility of the communication. They're basically putting their reputation on the table, and by adopting certain strategies, for instance, raising the domestic audience cost, they can make themselves credible. Because if they are proven wrong, if they are proven not to be serious later on about their claims, they will suffer from the cost. The reading that you will have from this class discusses that as well. There are all kinds of costly signaling procedures. Domestic audience cost is perhaps the most famous one in international politics. So to sum up, information is absolutely critical for negotiations and for bargaining, especially for crisis bargaining, because there another dimension of information problematic comes in, and that's just the simple fact of being able to track what's going on and being able to process all the information that is coming in at a very high speed. On the one hand, information sharing and transparency is critical for the success of the negotiation. Knowing who wants what is critical for the solution of the bargaining setup. On the other hand, no one has the incentives to actually reveal the information.